Hello, everyone. Ex-Walk Hill Bethelite here. And per a recent news article, Jehovah's Witnesses could be deported in mass because of a change in the policy that would prevent a, border agent or we would call them immigration enforcement or ICE or whatever it is you want to term them. There was a policy that would prevent them from going into a church or a kingdom hall. Well, now that that policy has, per news reports, been removed, there's nothing stopping ICE from going into kingdom halls and deporting Jehovah's Witnesses by the thousand. See, we've been talking about the decline of Jehovah's Witnesses somewhat naturally over time. Over time, you have Jehovah's Witnesses that die off. The major issue Jehovah's Witnesses have been having is recruitment. Recruitment amongst Jehovah's Witnesses is darn near non-existent, especially in America. I can't speak for third world countries where you could probably convince someone to become a Jehovah's Witnesses with a small bag of Lay's potato chips. I'm not talking about places like that. I'm talking about where the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses are, which is in America. Your numbers in America are important. Could you imagine if the Catholic Church, you have Catholics all over the world, but where the Catholic Church is headquartered in Rome, it was just a ghost town. There wasn't no Catholics there. That would look horrible. They'd have to move the freaking Vatican. Like it would just destroy the image of the Catholic Church. That is exactly what is happening with Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, with this new change in the deportation policies, ICE or immigration officials being able to go right into a kingdom hall and deport them by the thousands. You are talking about speeding up a process that was already in play. The demise, the destruction, the collapse, the implosion of Jehovah's Witnesses for 100 different reasons. There are 100 different reasons for the collapse of Jehovah's Witnesses. One is the blatant false prophecies. It's gotten so bad that you can't even hide it. Not just false prophecies, but false teachings. You can't have false prophecies and false teachings and have had them printed in all kinds of your literature, like watchtowers where it's readily available for people to read all the screw-ups from the generation of 1914 that wouldn't pass away before the end, being switched to overlapping generations, something just totally nonsensical, to people stopping the partaking at the Jehovah Witness Memorial. Some of us would prefer to call it a black mass that Jehovah's Witnesses have, but the memorial of Jehovah's Witnesses, people would stop partaking, and now all of a sudden they're partaking because the whole end of the world thing has been pushed back. So now all of a sudden people are anointed now. Like, you have too many things that are blatantly obvious amongst Jehovah's Witnesses. A whole bunch of beardless men running around rampant all over the planet earth. Like literally, Jehovah's Witnesses had a rule that men can't have beards. It was a sin. Now, if anybody tells you, oh no, Marcus is lying, it wasn't a sin amongst Jehovah's Witnesses to have a beard. Well, amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, you have to supposedly have to be a righteous person and in good standing to be able to get up on their little stages that they have at these kingdom halls and give talks and things like that. Have positions like elder and ministerial servant. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses weren't giving out those privileges, what they would call privileges. I'm using cult speech. They weren't giving out titles to people who had beards. They weren't promoting in their religion people who had beards. You didn't have any governing body with beards. You didn't have people at Bethel with beards. You didn't have ministerial servants or elders or pioneers. None of these people had beards. So you just had a beardless population just running around the planet. I'm talking in Africa. A bunch of smooth-faced Africans just running around, faces smooth as all get out. Freaking Russia and all over the planet, places where people would normally have beards. You just got a bunch of smooth-faced Jehovah's Witnesses running around. Now all of a sudden they all growing beards. Pure, blatant, obvious. Okay, so God never had an issue with beards. This is just an open and very visible display of cult power. What is a cult? You got somebody who is, or a group of people who are in total control of their members. They supersede God. So where there's nothing in the Bible that says it's against Scripture or against God to have a beard, in a cult, the leaders are essentially the same as God. So if they say men can't have beards, then men can't have beards. And then if they change it to men can now, well, now it's darn near Scripture that men can now. Everybody has got to obey that. In a cult, you have to obey the other men who are leaders, just as if they were God. That's the difference between a cult and a regular church. A regular church, the pastor say, y'all just shave all y'all's beards. You got people that'll just leave the church. They'll go somewhere else. You got people that'll laugh the pastor off the stage. You got people that'll vote him out. With Jehovah's Witnesses, it's a cult. Their leaders can make false predictions, false teachings, tell everybody to take off their beards, tell them to put them back on, tell women they can't have no pants, then tell them they can, and nothing ever happens to them. People just follow them regardless. Tell people you can't have medical procedures and you're going to die, and then they'll just freaking die. Like that is a cult. And the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses was already facing people finding out that this is a cult based off of the testimonials of people on YouTube. That in and of itself is broad. There are countless videos from countless people giving this testimonial. Now, if there are 6 people accusing a person or a group of something, that gives quite a bit of weight to what they're saying. If there are countless people, not just in America, but in other countries, all saying Jehovah's Witnesses, they're a cult, they destroy families, they predict false teachings, which people plan their whole lives around the incoming when Jehovah's Witnesses say it will, and then when it doesn't come, well, Jehovah's Witnesses just ignore these people who have quit jobs and sold homes and done all kinds of things. because of the predictions that they had in 1975, the predictions they had about the of 1914, all were false. See, that it's a blatant, obvious cult, and the testimonials, the videos that people are making, like this one, where you got so many people all saying the same thing, they can't all be lying. That is something that Jehovah's Witnesses have had to worry about. Just it being broadcast across the world that it's a cult. They've also had to worry about the backlash of the disfellowshipping policies, where Jehovah's Witnesses essentially lie and say, well, if you sin or break a scriptural rule, then they'll use something called disfellowshipping, where a person's own parents, their siblings, their friends, everyone will essentially disown that person. No, they'll disown them if they just don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. They'll disown them if, for example, there are religious services being held by Jehovah's Witnesses and that person just isn't in attendance for a while. 2 weeks and people will up and just start disowning. The disowning amongst Jehovah's Witnesses is so rampant and so bad, where parents can just abuse that Jehovah's Witness rule in order to avoid speaking to their children. If a parent don't want to speak to their children, they can just use the excuse, well, they're not doing their watchtower, and they haven't been coming to the hall, so I don't really want to talk to them anyway, but I can use this abusive Jehovah's Witness policy to now say, well, God doesn't want me to talk to them anymore. Hey, they're not in my cult, so I can just disown my kids after I have them, and I don't have to be a responsible human being anymore. That has been really one of the main uses of that policy that Jehovah's Witnesses have, is so that people can just be completely irresponsible humans. They don't have to help their own families. They don't have to speak to their own families if they don't want to. They can just find something that is wrong and say, well, God doesn't want me to talk to him anymore. Now I can just, free myself of them. Well, once this is going on all around the world, well, you're going to have a lot of people who are going to speak out about it. So that's something that Watchtower has had to worry about, in addition to whenever they give a false teaching or false prediction, this darn near gets spread all over the world, right? So now you have, on top of all of that, the sexual abuse cases and the sexual abuse amongst Jehovah's Witnesses definitely was influenced by Jehovah's Witness policy that Jehovah's Witnesses should all trust Jehovah's Witnesses, and that the only people that you should be cautious around, or the only people that you shouldn't fully trust, is what Jehovah's Witnesses call worldly people. And worldly people are essentially just people who ain't in their cult. So if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you're worldly. And that's a bad thing. So they don't trust you. Well, the polar opposite of that is if you're in their cult, well, then they trust you regardless of who you are. It doesn't matter if you just came out of prison. So people are just trusting their kids with whoever. I personally saw Jehovah's Witness parents dropping off teen children, even younger than that, at the Kingdom, just dropping them off there at the Kingdom Hall for whoever was at that Kingdom Hall, to then take those teen children or even younger out in what they call field service. They wasn't monitoring who in the world was taking their kids, where they were taking their kids, or what they were doing with them when they were taking them, because they were Jehovah's Witnesses. And Jehovah's Witnesses teach that God has selected all these people to be Jehovah's Witnesses, right? So, or God is specifically working only with Jehovah's Witnesses. So this is some small little group of really, really good people, and they couldn't possibly do anything wrong, right? Now you got all these sexual abuse cases because they are not any better than anyone else, and people do a lot of things wrong. So people had more access to children in Jehovah's Witnesses than any other place that I'm aware of. Yeah, I don't even care if it's a school. At school, you can't. There ain't no teacher that's just gonna walk into a class, pick a bunch of kids, take them in their car, and just drive off somewhere. That ain't gonna happen. At Kingdom Hall, that could happen. Parents drop their kids off. Whoever, I'll go out in service with you, and you. Hop in my car and they drive off. That was life when I used to pioneer. Regular, normal life when I used to pioneer. And yes, there were all kinds of things that were questionable happening. Flirtation, just all kinds of stuff. So now Jehovah's Witnesses have got to worry about the legal ramifications of that. The payout, paying out millions of dollars in lawsuits because of that. And now you have a change in policy that Jehovah's Witnesses have to also worry about, where immigration officials can go inside of churches per the reports I've heard. Now, with one of the issues with this is Jehovah's Witnesses have what they call Spanish congregations, where everybody in there speaks Spanish. So an immigration official wouldn't necessarily have to be concerned that I'm about to walk into a church. We don't even know if the people in here are of Spanish descent. They could all be white. They could all be black. They could all be Asian for all they know, just walking into any church all willy-nilly. Well, Jehovah's Witnesses have labeled them for you. They have labeled them Spanish congregation. As a matter of fact, you drive past the Kingdom Hall, and the ones that just have all people in there of Latin descent, or people that speak Spanish, it'll have the Spanish writing outside of the Kingdom Hall, talking about some testistios, Jehovah Witnesses, or something like that. Just some cult stuff in Spanish, right? It is easily recognizable, and Jehovah's Witnesses have just made it way too easy, because if a immigration official were to enter into a Kingdom Hall, a lot of Kingdom Halls ain't got no windows. A lot of them have like maybe 2 places that can be used as an entrance and an exit. And they lock the doors, right? So a nice person goes in the Kingdom Hall. Well, the only other exit, other than the one that they just entered into, usually is one other place. So they could have one other officer or one other car in the one other place that they could all run out of, right? Let's say an ICE person walks into a Kingdom Hall, people see them, and if they decide to run, right? Because this is a Spanish congregation, they know everybody in there is Spanish. They know they probably aren't the brightest people in the world, so who knows where all they, because Jehovah's Witnesses target people. When I used to go, matter of fact, when I used to go to both the Spanish and English congregation before Bethel, for field service, I would always wonder how it is at the Spanish congregation that they know how to just go to Spanish homes, or they know how to just target people who speak Spanish. Even other languages, whether it be Japanese, Korean, or what have you, they know how to focus on just those people. Jehovah's Witnesses target immigrants. They target people coming into the country, then they try to find them and they try to convert them. They're trying to convert anybody that they think is easy to convert. One of the populations that they would try to convert when I used to go to foreign language congregations are people who just came to the country because they feel like they don't know anyone and they may not have a lot of family here. And the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses is always looking to capitalize on a person's being lonely or needing something in order to draw them into their cult. So Jehovah's Witnesses for years have been focusing on groups like people who are just coming into the country. All of them may not be legal. Lots of them may not be legal. So they're darn near gathering people in one place for ICE to get. So ICE could go to congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses that are Spanish, and thousands. They could by the thousands, because if you ever come to Texas, you don't see nothing but Spanish. The congregation is closest to me. I don't think I've seen an English-speaking person there yet. It's dominated by Spanish. It would be interesting to really, really see what the numbers are. How many Jehovah's Witnesses in America are English-speaking and how many are foreign-speaking? I can guarantee a large number are foreign-speaking. Large number, as in, if ICE were to look at Jehovah's Witnesses, and I don't know why they wouldn't. Why would they change the policy, according to news that I saw, stating that ICE can enter into churches if they weren't planning on entering into churches? Why go through the paperwork? In my opinion, they're planning on going into churches. Just like they're changing it to where they can go into other places also, sensitive places. So if they're planning on going into churches, why wouldn't they look at Jehovah's Witnesses, where this is a group who specifically focuses on trying to convert people coming into the country, and they don't care if they're legal or not. Jehovah's Witnesses do not care if they're legal or not at all. So ICE could easily focus on Jehovah's Witnesses and thousands. They could have a bus parked outside of the Kingdom Hall and just go from Spanish congregation to Spanish congregation, just loading that bus up and just, do you know, that would wipe out Jehovah's Witnesses. They can't take that. So this is the first time in my memory that in America has been like the most protected place there is for Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are more protected in America. Cults in general are more protected in America than anywhere else. Well, you have a very sensitive situation when Jehovah's Witnesses ain't really bringing in a whole lot of English-speaking regular American people. They bring in more Spanish-speaking or more foreign-speaking people. That's where they had been seeing growth whenever there was growth back when I was in that cult. So if the one area where they have had growth, the one area where it has just been dominating Kingdom Halls in Texas and in other places is the Spanish speaking. If ICE goes through and checks Kingdom Halls, Watchtower, it is over with. That's the one thing that can possibly happen in America and can happen legally, where it would wipe Jehovah's Witnesses out faster than anywhere else. Now, you would say, well, but Marcus, if ICE comes through and just buses out a whole bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses back to Mexico and back to wherever all else, Wouldn't they just go back to the Kingdom Hall there? Yeah. But remember what I said about the Catholic Church. You cannot have the Vatican be a ghost town and not think that this is going to be a domino effect for the rest of the world. It would look bad. The headquarters of the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses is in America. They ain't moving it because they've enjoyed more protection here. They ain't moving that headquarters. So the headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses is America. If America becomes a ghost town, I'm talking they would have to do another round of Kingdom Hall sales. They'd have to sell all these Spanish congregations if ICE comes through. Because not only would ICE come through and thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses, all that large number just being gone all of a sudden, they couldn't take that. But also, a lot of them would probably go into hiding and they'd all just be on Zoom. Kingdom Hall still just as empty. So if ICE focuses on Jehovah's Witnesses, then you're either getting thousands deported or you're getting large numbers deported and large numbers refusing to go to the Kingdom Hall out of fear of being deported and just being on Zoom, and you still got a bunch of empty halls that once those get sold, this is where their headquarters is. According to Jehovah's Witness theology, God himself focuses all his attention not on any other church, not on any other religion, not on any other group, just Jehovah's Witnesses. And if he's just focusing all his attention on America and you don't see nothing but tumbleweeds floating around when you look for Jehovah's Witnesses in America, that's going to look bad for the rest of the world. That's a domino effect. You can't hide that. That's not something you can just sweep under the rug. That's going to get out. And when it gets out amongst all the other things that have gotten out amongst the population about the false teachings, about the false predictions, about they can't figure out if they want to have beards or not, about the sexual abuse that's gone on with children amongst Jehovah's Witnesses, with governing body members saying that it would be presumptuous to even say that they're the one and only true religion. Like, you got too much. Eventually, if you have a table and you keep piling things on top of this table, false teachings, false predictions, child sex abuse, families that are just abusing each other and shunning each other and just being horrible people. You got the numbers, Kingdom Halls being sold all over the place. You got people that are doing more cart standing than knocking on. Eventually the table's going to break. You can't put but so many things on a table before it just bursts and it breaks, right? The table can only hold so much. That's the noggin of Jehovah's Witnesses around the world. It can only be filled with so much doubt, so much information before the noggin of Jehovah's Witnesses just blows up. Filled with, there's no way it's the truth. It's literally impossible to be the truth and constantly be false all the time. And having to change all these false teachings. You can't be the truth and the false at the same time. It will wipe them out. There are so many things. And we've talked about these things. We've talked about the implosion of Jehovah's Witnesses. We've talked about how Jehovah's Witnesses, it's just a very low-paying, very bad job where you're treated horribly. You can never do enough. They always want more. And you're not getting nothing out of it. You're not getting paid for standing next to no carts. You're not getting paid hardly anything for going to Bethel and working for them. It's a very low-paying, bad job where you're treated horribly you're losing people anyway. This ICE immigration thing, they start going into kingdom halls, it's over. Better yet, what if ICE starts to dress up like Jehovah's Witnesses with the book bags and then start knocking on doors? Especially with Spanish-speaking people, because you got so many Spanish people flocking to the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. Well, you got people opening doors then. So ICE could focus on congregation or focus on Jehovah's Witnesses, wipe out a large number of them faster than anything else. And on top of that, they could dress up like Jehovah's Witnesses, knock on someone's door and say, you got time to talk about the kingdom? And then they open the door, and the next thing you know, they're off to wherever it is. I'm telling you, we're living in times where Jehovah's Witnesses is going to be coming to an end faster than you can think it would. Comment down below. XWall Kill Bethelite signing out.